Hey there, everybody. Before we get started with the finale of The Princess of Vandan, The Sword of Revenge, I kind of wanted to say a few things. First off, I want to thank Malika and Super Sith, aka Acrophyte, aka the Pentecostal Nerd, for writing these stories, collaborating together, and making them available to the public. I mean, I fell in love with these stories the first time I read them. It's just amazingly unique, and there's just so much that I love about it. The characters, the story, the journeys that all the characters go through, and this is going to sound silly, but in a lot of ways, I feel like the characters in the story almost mirror my real life. I read these stories. I came across them in 2013. This was at a time when, things were pretty rough for me. The year before, I just met my wife, a girlfriend at the time, and I felt very lost before I met her, and she brought a lot of meaning, and she kind of helped me discover who I was. And reading all the other stories, Children of Vandan, The Invasion, Far From Home, a lot of ways it felt like they continued to mirror my real life. Like with Far From Home, when I read that, we just experienced a family tragedy, and it helped me to mourn the loss of our loved one. And coming up with and following up with this one, The Sword of Revenge, I love how in the finale, after I read it and while I was doing this project, we recently found out, which some of you guys already know with one of the videos I did earlier, was we're having our first baby. And I again, it's amazing how much it mirrors my real life, how, we're finally gonna, increase our family, and the characters in the story are also doing that. So I just think it means all the more. I think it makes the story all the more special to me. So I just wanted to thank both of them for writing these stories because they mean so much to me. I also wanted to thank my wife for encouraging me to make these videos, start my YouTube channel. I never expected to go big with this channel or make something out of it. It was mostly just to do as a hobby, like create these stories, make these videos, whether it's ASMR, narration, or just something stupid and funny. But I want to thank her because at first I was like, no, nobody wants to see that. I'm too anxious, And I should also probably thank Lisa ASMR for encouraging me to make my own YouTube channel. I mean, she's an amazing ASMR artist. If you guys haven't checked out her channel, do it. I mean it. Also for voicing Belina and Sylvie in the last video. I also want to thank Goddess of Desire for lending her voice to Princess Valerie in the recent video series. She just knocks it out of the park. It's amazing that she brings this character to life, and hopefully we can continue to work together going forward. If we, do a revamp of the original videos, I would love to revamp the original videos, maybe bring in sound effects, have the same voice actors, redub all the lines. That way it's not a man, me, voicing all the characters. And I'm pretty sure this is not going to be the last video of the Vandan series. I love this series so much, and I know that there's one series that's in the works, Sylvie's Travels, that's hopefully will get done eventually sometime this year. And depending on when the baby's born, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time, but I'm going to be pushing for it. Hopefully, I can get Lisa ASMR on board to voice Sylvie again and see what we can do with that. But in the meantime, I just wanted to thank everybody for inspiring me, encouraging me to finish the videos, and all the people who've been watching, who've been listening to the story, checking it out for themselves. I want to appreciate you guys for tuning in, like watching me do these weird edits and pile everything together with these images and sounds and everything. And I just really appreciate it. And I don't really have much else to add except here we are with the finale, and I hope you guys enjoy. The weeks went by, and while Alban lay in his chambers, gradually recovering from his injuries,
Valerie helped her subjects to rebuild their town as quickly and efficiently as they could manage. By sheer luck, Bargar had managed to overlook the newly constructed school building, as well as the rows of flowers Valerie had just planted, and they still stood untouched. But the remainder of Rismark was in a sorry state, and would require a lot of time and effort to repair. But Valerie had time, lots of it, and she threw herself into the work that was required of her, finding that it helped her take her mind off of those who died in the attack. The attack victims, however, also necessitated the addition of a new feature in Rismark, a cemetery. But the great majority of the townsfolk had survived, and all of them knew that they had Valerie to thank for their survival. Any remaining doubts as to her ability to rule over and protect the people were quickly vanishing. There were even talks of holding another feast in the castle to celebrate her victory over the enemy, but she ruled against it, at least for now. For her, the fact that she'd come so close to losing Alban, and her own life as well, was very sobering. She now knew that she wasn't as invincible as she'd always thought she was. Bargar's body was buried in a distant field, unmarked and unmentioned, and his gigantic armor was taken to Rismark, where the town's 2 blacksmiths were given the task to break it up into smaller pieces and refashion them into a manner of all sorts of useful articles and weapons. Whatever magic had once possessed it seemed to have disappeared. As for Shalmat, Valerie told no one about her encounter with him in the cellar, with the exception of Alban. She also couldn't bear looking at the stone statue he had been transformed into. So one day, she took a large hammer she found nearby in the cellar and smashed it to bits. It was, after all, just a statue now. A couple months later, Alban's wounds had healed almost completely. He was lying on top of one of the immense pillows on Valerie's bed, thankful to know that he'd be able to walk around outside again from tomorrow morning onwards. It was nighttime now, and Valerie would soon be joining him in their bedchamber. They had slept apart from one another while he was still recovering, but he felt ready tonight to share her bed again. She soon entered the room, looking worn out from a hard day's work, as she usually did. He beckoned her over, but she instead headed towards one of the cupboards on the opposite side of the room. She unlocked a small drawer and took something out of it, then came over and sat down at the foot of the bed and looked down at her husband. "Valerie? What's wrong?" Alban asked, as he realized she didn't look like she was in the mood for lovemaking. Did something happen?"
No, nothing happened, Alban. I have to show you something.
She laid a giant-sized scroll of moldy paper down on the pillow next to him. He looked at it with distaste, but taking her hint, he unrolled it as best as he could and looked at its contents. Then he looked up at her, puzzled. I don't understand. What is this thing?"
It's the magic scroll he used, Shalmat. He found it in the castle cellar somewhere. It's what he used to become giant-sized like me.
Shalmat? That evil wizard? The one you think was behind all this? But didn't you say that he was somehow turned to stone?
Yes, that's right.
She pointed at the scroll, and Alban now saw that there were 2 sentences written on it, though he couldn't read either one of them.
This is a spell that turns the reader into a giant.
She explained, pointing at the first sentence.
And the second passage is an incantation that turns objects into stone. It is supposed to be directed outwards, but Shalmat must have invoked it upon himself. He could read the letters of our language, Alban, but he didn't know their meaning. So he just read the entire scroll, believing it was all one spell.
Then he did that to himself?
Yes, he knew enough of the giant's tongue to recognize the scroll itself, but not enough to know when to stop.
Alban took another look at the ancient relic and sighed. He wondered how many other scrolls such as this one were hidden down there. Perhaps he and Valerie should have a look tomorrow, maybe get rid of a few of the things. "So now what?" he asked her. "What do we do with this thing?"
That's up to you, my dearest.
She looked at him in a funny way, then reached down and lifted him up carefully in her hand. She held him softly against her bosom, and he relished in the feeling of warmth and tenderness. It had felt like ages since she'd last held him like this. She'd been too afraid of harming him while his wounds were not yet fully healed.
Alban,
She said softly.
you have the choice to make. If you wish, you can read the scroll spell, the first spell only, of course, and become a giant like me. Then we can both be equals, you and me. We could have the same relationship as you would have with a human woman.
You mean, if I read from that thing, I'll become as big as you are?
Yes, my darling, you'll be a giant too. In fact, since you're a man and I'm, well, a woman, you'll be even taller than me.
But I don't even know how to read those words on the scroll.
I'll read them out for you first, my love, and you can just repeat them after me.
She saw how uncertain he looked, so she tried to reassure him and added,
Don't worry, it won't have any effect on me. I'm already a giant myself, in case you haven't noticed.
Valerie, are you sure about this? Is this what you want me to do? His voice began to tremble, and she quickly put him down on the pillow. He was frightened, she could tell. Perhaps it was the fear of ending up like Shalmat, locked into stone for all eternity. Or perhaps it was the thought of becoming a giant that terrified him. She lay her head down next to him and looked at him with affection.
Alban, my dearest Alban, what I want is for you to be as happy as you could be with me, here. I don't care what size you are. I just want you to be what makes you the happiest. That's all.
He walked over to her face and pressed himself against her lips. They felt so soft and comfortable, and he couldn't imagine ever not being able to feel their embrace again. He ran his hand along the skin of her cheek, and she responded by kissing her lips more closely against him. I fell in love with a girl, he whispered. A girl who was taller than any tree, and who could hold me in the palm of her hand. And I was no larger than her thumb. But she loved me as much as any woman has ever loved a man. That's the girl I want to spend the rest of my life with. He kissed her upper lip and then continued. Valerie, being here with you, in your bed, like this, I can't imagine ever being able to feel happier than right here, right now. Every morning, when I look up at you as you rise from bed, so tall, so beautiful, so magnificent in every way, I just feel so safe and so gratified with you. My goddess, my gorgeous giantess. When you hold me between your fingers, or caress me with your lips, or let me lie between your perfect breasts, I feel like I never want to leave or be anywhere else. And after all we've been through together, I can't think of you in any other way. I want you to be my lover and protector and wife, as gigantic and as stunning as you are right now. Perhaps there was a time when I would have wished you to be the same size as I am, but now, no. I'm sorry, but you're perfect the way you are. So, if you want me to join you as a giant, well, that's your choice, darling, not mine. I'll do it for you if you wish it, but not otherwise. Valerie lay silent for a moment, regarding her tiny partner with newfound amazement. She had expected him to jump at the chance of becoming a giant like her, having believed all along that he was secretly resentful of the fact that she was so much larger and stronger than him. But now that she could see what his true feelings were, She was overjoyed.
Oh, Alban, that's wonderful.
She exclaimed.
No, of course I don't want to make you change just for me. You're perfect just the way you are. Being a giant wouldn't make me love you any more than I already do. Human or giant, what does it matter? There's no difference to me. My dearest husband, you can stay as you are, and I promise to love you, cherish you, and defend you from all dangers as long as I live. As for this scroll...
She took the crumbling piece of paper and held it to the flame of one of the candles on her bedside table. It flared up with a bluish flame for an instant, then fell from her fingers as nothing but a pile of ash. She leaned in closer and then blew them away.
There,
she said, lying beside Alban again.
Good riddance to that. Any magic that can be used for evil doesn't deserve a place in Vandan.
Yes, I agree, Alban replied. So, that's that. Looks like it's just going to be you from now on, my dear. The last living giant on Earth.
For now.
For now? What do you mean? Valerie smiled shyly and gave Alban a little caress with her fingertips.
I've been waiting to tell you for weeks now, darling. Alban, we're going to have a baby.
Alban went stiff upon hearing the startling news. You mean... You're pregnant? You're pregnant?
Yes, I am.
And the baby? Is it going to be giant-sized?
Yes, it looks that way.
So, are you sure the child's mine then? Valerie suddenly looked cross and gave him a flick with her finger, which sent him sliding across the pillow.
Now, who else's child could it possibly be,
she said, upset at the accusation.
Do you think I've been seeing other men behind your back?
No, of course not, Alban yelled. He stood back up and approached her, realizing how insulting his slip of the tongue was to her. I'm really sorry, he continued. It came out, that's all. I know you've been faithful to me, Valerie, as I have been to you. It's just, well, I've never really given the notion of having a child any thought. I mean, I've always wanted to be a father one day and raise children of my own, but, if the baby's going to be giant-sized... She saw how ashamed he looked and knew that it was a lot for him to take in. They were both still young, and neither of them had any knowledge of the effort it takes to raise a child. But Valerie saw an opportunity for something good, something wonderful to come from this. So she placed her hands on either side of Alban and folded them around him. His minuscule body fit in snugly between her palms.
I forgive you, my love,
she said.
And I understand why you're concerned. Raising a child is hard enough for any parent. And if that child is big enough to step on you or swallow you whole, just by accident. Yes, I can see why you're so anxious. But I'm convinced that having a baby is the right thing to do.
She squeezed him against her own body before continuing.
Alban, I'm a giant, the last one on Earth, as you've said. And because of this, I can do so many things. Things that a normal-sized human can't do. Things that can help Vandan and defend the people. If our children are born giant-sized, that means that they will also be able to do those things too. The race of giants could come back into this world. Darling, through us. And this time, they will not be remembered for their cruelty and their hatred of humans, but as mankind's guardians and protectors, who will use their great strength and power to make the world safer and better for all of those around them. You don't have to be worried about a thing, Alban. I'll take it upon ourselves to raise our children, and I promise you, they'll grow up and learn to respect and care for all humans. No son or daughter of ours will ever be like the giants of the old. I swear to it.
No, they won't be. I believe you, Valerie. I know that no child could hope for a better, more devoted and more loving mother than you. And you won't have to do it alone. I'll be there for you, and for our child, all the time. We'll make it work, somehow. And one day, when this baby of yours is all grown up, and takes over for us as the ruler of Vandan, he or she, they'll make us proud. Valerie's eyes were beginning to grow moist, but they were tears of happiness. She and Alban, against all odds, had found their place in the world, together. They had overcome great dangers and obstacles, and they would have to do so again. But they were determined to stick together through it all, as loving partners, and soon as a family too.